We have a financial operation, 2 accounting firms, an investment company, and a education company. This year, we're on pace to do about 3.5, 4 million. Football was that outlet. All the pain that I was feeling, I could let the game speak to it. Until I found Christ, I had major anger issues to the point where I had cracked back on this kid so hard that I snapped his collarbone. And I did not feel bad for him. I actually felt like this thrill of it. I was like, okay, this is kind of scary. I go in to block one of the linebackers, and when I did, I couldn't get my hand out. He took off with my hand in his shoulder pad, and it tore my labrum completely off. And I just remember being like, oh man, it's over. I learned the harsh lesson about entrepreneurship that you can't build a company around yourself, because if you go out of commission, the whole business is gone. I got fired by all of my clients, and I had nothing. And I just laid on the floor and cried, because I was like, what am I going to do with my life? God wants you to wrestle with him. Why would he not want the wealth to be in the people that he trusts the most? And he says, give your tithe and see if I don't pour out blessings on you. The only place in the Bible God is saying you can test him. He's like, test me. Just see if this is true.
So Grant, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So what do you do for business, and what is your revenue currently?
We have a financial operation. So for us, we have at the top a parent company that manages 2 accounting firms, an investment company, and a education company. And so this year we're on pace to do about 3.5, 4 million across all the companies, and we've grown almost double revenue every single year since 2020. So it's been incredible growth that God's done. Didn't plan on this. It's just one of those things. God led me to accounting and finance, and because out of college I wanted to be a trainer, and I unfortunately that did not work out. Tore my shoulder up, and I learned the harsh lesson about entrepreneurship that you can't build a company around yourself, because if you go out of commission, the whole business is gone. And I'm grateful that I learned that early on.
And I think it's very impressive too that you're doing those numbers with no marketing, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's been one of my things. So when I had my sports training business. I did Facebook marketing. It was weird. I never went to school for it. I just knew I saw ads on Facebook, and I was like, okay, I better run ads. So I got a couple of clients from it. But then when I did accounting, I never thought to do marketing, because in finance, referrals are kings, because there's so much trust that goes into handling people's finances that referrals go way further than if you see an ad on Facebook. And so I quickly was like, let me put all of my effort into referrals and, not just burn my cash on ads, which now I'm at that point where I'm like, okay, ads, we've got to figure out how to make ads work, because you kind of hit that plateau at the $2 to $5 million range, where it's like you've burned all your referrals at this point, and you've got to go to ads to grow.
I think that's pretty cool. You have like a bent towards teaching and educating.
Yeah.
Where's that come from?
So my mom is a teacher.
Okay.
She's been a teacher, she just retired last year, and she's been doing it since I was before I was born. She was a 2nd grade teacher. And so I that's probably where it comes from. But also it's like, I didn't have the financial literacy, the financial knowledge growing up. And I realized it's not taught in school. So it's like, it has to come from somewhere, because if we're not taught it, we just end up falling into the default, which is, consumer debt, and, we just pass that on to our kids. And so it's like, I felt the urge and need to educate and, help the next generation that comes, especially now that I have a son and about to have 2.
So, growing up in Colleyville, right? Because you talk about your parents. What was home like for you?
It was interesting. So my mom loves to tell this story of when I was in the first grade. I told my teacher that my parents were divorced, and of course the teacher calls my mom and is like, "When did you guys get a divorce?" And she's like, "We didn't get a divorce. What are you talking about?" And somebody in my class had been like, "Well, I never see my dad. My parents are divorced, and my dad worked 2 jobs so that my mom could stay home with us, and so he would go to work during the day." And then he would go to work at night too. And so I would hardly see my dad except on the weekends, which lined up with what my classmate was like, okay, this is, what divorce looks like. And for me, I was like, okay, well, my parents are divorced. I never hardly see my dad. And so it was tough. It was tough. And my dad, he lost his dad when I was about 8. And there was a shift in my dad when he lost his dad, and there was a lot of anger and rage, and he became type 2 diabetes, or type 2 diabetic because he had gained so much weight, and his temper would flare. And as the oldest sibling, I felt that urge and that need to protect everybody, which not right at 8 years old. I shouldn't have to protect the family, but I felt that need, and there was that tension really until I was about 15 or 16 years old. Very, very verbally abusive home, to the point where my mom was like, I have to send you to anger management, because in school I would get called from the teachers of like, I would get so upset if I didn't pass a test or something, and I snapped a desk in Spanish class. And the teacher was like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with this kid? And I had the foulest mouth you could think of, because that's just the environment that I grew up in. And so for me, until I found Christ, I had major anger issues, major, cussing problem, to the point where in high school I played receiver, and back in the day you could crack back block. You could, nowadays you can't do that, but I had cracked back on this kid so hard that I snapped his collarbone. And it was this like out of body experience. I did not feel bad for him. I actually felt like this like thrill of it, which was, I was like, okay, this is kind of scary. Like, I didn't feel any remorse. I felt like, all right, I inflicted pain, which was kind of a scary like feeling for me looking back on it. But through God's grace, I got saved and came to know Christ, which obviously led me down a different path and healed me from that. But it was difficult growing up, for sure.
And can you talk about that moment when you got saved?
Yeah, so it's a kind of a, what do you want to call it, bittersweet nowadays, because so I got saved at Gateway Church through a Robert Morris message, and he was interviewing Josh Hamilton, the baseball player. And at the time, Josh Hamilton had gotten saved and came to know Christ, and he had a pretty gnarly past, drugs and alcohol and sex. And my 15-year-old brain was like, well, I'm not that bad. So if he can be saved, I can be saved. So I logically got saved at 15, and Gateway was my home church, and I learned a lot from Robert Morris, and last year when that came out, it was a it was a really difficult moment for me because, I'd gotten pretty much my entire Christian knowledge from him, and to learn, the stuff that was going on behind the scenes was pretty difficult. But it was one of those. I got saved, and my anger went away, my cussing went away. I had one of those moments that I no longer struggled with those things. It wasn't this like long drawn out thing. The Lord miraculously healed me from those things, and it was a real blessing. But like I said, I didn't know that I was going to deal with repercussions 15 years later of, oh wow, the person that I learned everything from is imperfect, which I learned that lesson of, okay, I can't put all of my hope and faith in the teacher, but the actual word that is being taught.
Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered, because I didn't really grow up in the church neither, but that's been like a common thing that has been coming up, where you go to a church and a scandal comes out about the pastor, mm-hmm. and then now people are falling away from God, right? Because the pastor did something, right? Help me understand like the mindset that someone is going through when something like that happens, to where they decide to walk away from God entirely.
Yeah, it's certainly a thought that runs through your mind, because the crazy thing is I found out about the scandal. Me and my wife were actually on an anniversary trip, and I got the text of all of that coming out, and it was a real numbing moment, because especially when the person that you feel like you learned everything from, mm-hmm. I learned about tithing, I learned about the Holy Spirit, I learned about all of that from Robert Morris, and to learn that your teacher was hiding and disguising things is certainly one of those things that makes you question of like, did I really, is this real? And so for me, it was this wrestling with God of like, okay, learning to go directly to the source rather than the vessel that is being used. And it really brought me to this: we're all taught by humans. Churches are all run by humans, and we all make mistakes. And that is bound to happen. And when we look at it through that lens and realize that God uses all of us imperfectly to get his, to help people be saved, it's a very humbling moment, because I'm like, okay, I certainly don't want everything that I've ever done to be mm-hmm. put on blast like that. And the pastors and teachers are held to a higher standard, but at the same time, they're human. Yeah. Like, coming to that reality of God is far greater than anything we could ever do. And, in looking through the Bible, like David, it says he was a man after God's own heart, yet he had Uriah killed so that he could be with Uriah's mm-hmm. wife. And it's like, that's crazy. Like, God says this is somebody after his own heart, and he had somebody murdered. So it's like, when you look at the reality of God, he is so gracious to us, and he can handle our wrestling. Like, he can handle the back and forth. I think it was Lecrae who said, he is like, God wants you to wrestle with him. He doesn't want you to pretend like, your doubts aren't there. Mm-hmm. Like, bring mm-hmm. your doubts to God. I think that was a real moment for me of like, I can actually wrestle with God.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy, because I feel like the closer I got with God myself is usually when I'm the most raw and authentic in my conversation towards him, mm-hmm. instead of trying to like pray or talk to him how I feel like maybe I'm supposed to talk to him.
Right.
And it's pretty crazy how those two people that brought you into Christ
Yep.
fell out, and you were able to gain something you were able to get an even deeper relationship with God because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when you come to that moment of being extremely humbled because you feel like everything you built is just back down to the bare bones, like God meets you there. And, a lot of it has to do with my son. The way that I look at my son, I'm like, God's like, that's how I look at you. And it's like, I don't care if my son throws a fit, decides at the dinner table he's going to throw his pizza across the room. Like, I'm still going to love him no matter what. And God's like, that's how I love you. And it's been a really incredible journey to go on. And I think God's super gracious to allow me to have that, like, in the physical, see what it really looks like.
Yeah, I bet. And speaking of, I want to talk about like your athletic career,
right?
Too, because you played D1 football,
yeah,
at the highest level too.
Yeah.
How did you get into football?
My dad was a big football fan, and so I grew up watching it. Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, hearing John Madden talk, and Ricky Williams was. I mean, like back in the day, I was like, I want to be like Ricky Williams, and I remember the first year I finally like convinced my parents to let me play tackle football in the 4th grade.
So they didn't want you to play?
No, my mom was like, no, you can wait until high school. And I actually remember at the dinner table, I told her, I was like, I want to play football this year. And I was like, I won't play basketball, or not basketball. I won't play baseball in the spring if you'll let me play football in the fall. And I don't think she thought I would follow through with it, because I think she just said yes so that I would finish eating dinner that night. But I never let her forget it. And so my dad was like, look, we told him that he could, so we got to do it. And so the 4th grade, I finally got to play. And I was like, I'm going to be a running back. I'm going to be 34 and I'm going to be like Ricky Williams. Man, I got so humbled. We lost every single game that year, and we scored 2 touchdowns the whole year. I scored one of them on an onside kick recovery that I took to the house. So it was one of the most humbling moments of like, man, I'm going to be Ricky Williams. And then I couldn't do anything. And so it was extremely humbling, but I loved the physicality of it. Like I said, I grew up watching it, and like I said, the tension in the home, it was an outlet for me. And while I played football, I loved Kobe Bryant, and Kobe talks about how, like, in basketball, he was like, basketball was my outlet to just let everything out, and that's what football was for me. Football was that outlet that I could just let, like, all the pain that I was feeling, I could let the game speak to it. And I just thrived on it. And once I got to high school, I started to realize, like, so in probably about 8th grade is when I moved over to receiver. And it was actually from front yard football. The neighbor was the head coach. His dad was the head coach. And he was like, man, you're just mossing people. Like mossing was the term. And he was like, you're just mossing everybody in the front yard. And it was funny. In one of the practices, he was like, all right, Grant, I'm gonna put 3 people on you, run down to the end of the field. And I remember him looking over, he was like, watch this. And sure enough, I went down in between 3 guys and caught it. And he was like, I told you, he needs to play receiver. And so that was kind of that moment of like, all right, I'm gonna go play receiver type of thing. And at Colleyville Heritage, it was a big deal if you got to play on varsity as a sophomore. And so I told my dad, I was like, I'm going to play varsity as a sophomore. And he was like, yeah, they got starting receivers. You're not going to play. Yeah. And so the first game of the year, they were blowing him
first
out.
Game of the year
as a sophomore.
As a sophomore, okay.
Yeah, so we traveled out to Odessa to play. Like, we used to do those things where you travel kind of across the state to go play. And we played Odessa, and we were up so big. They were like, all right, we're going to put in all the backups. So as the sophomore, they were like, all right, go get it. And the quarterback, he was a senior at the time, and we kind of became buddies and stuff. And I was like, dude, I don't care who's on me. Throw it to me every single time. He threw it to me. We got one drive, and he threw it to me every time. And I caught it in between two guys in the end zone for a touchdown. And I walked off after that touchdown, and I told the receivers coach, and I said, I need to start now. And he was like, yeah, you're playing against the backups. You're all right. And so then the next week we played in Cowboys Stadium, and I didn't really get to play very much. I got to play a little bit because the JV game, it got rained out. So I was like, I'm eligible. I didn't play this week. So can you play me? It was a tighter game, so they didn't play me. And so he was like, the receivers coach was like, you're going to play JV the rest of the year. And I was like, man. Well, it turns out, I think it was like 4 games before the end of the year, the receiver in front of me broke his collarbone. And he was like, all right, you want your shot? You're going to get it now. And so I was like, all right, well, he's not going to get it back. And, so I went in and first game caught a touchdown, and I was like, okay, this is going to be good. We're going to be good. And so sophomore year, I got all district honorable mention. And I was like, all right, I got to play as a sophomore. Junior year comes around, and I had pretty much all the colleges recruiting me. Okay. Because if you play at the time, 5A was the biggest. And so if you played as a sophomore, you were going to get the recruits because they were like, look, you're playing. You're already playing, yeah. Yeah, so like you're already playing. You're good. And so I had all the people recruiting me. And that off season in spring ball, I broke my tailbone. And it was devastating because I couldn't hardly run. Like every time I tried to run, it would catch. And so I was slow and couldn't catch the ball because every time I reach up, I could feel it in my tailbone. And so I lost pretty much all of my recruiting at that point, and to the point where I didn't even start my junior year because it was so bad. And so I was left in that moment of like, dude, what am I gonna do? Like, I thought I was gonna go play D1. I thought it was all made at that point. And junior year, I don't know how it is for basketball, but junior year,
that's the year.
Is the
that's
year.
The year you gotta do it.
Like if you do it as a senior, they're like, it's too late.
Yeah.
And so I missed that, and I was like, I'm done. I'm toast. Unless you just like burn out, your senior year, and which I thought could be possible because the starting quarterback my senior year, he was a junior and he was committed to OU. So I was like, okay, OU's already going to be coming to the game. Yeah. He was the number 1 quarterback in the state. I was like, I'll be able to get some juice going. And so I had an all right year, not anything big that, attracted people. And so I got an offer to go as a walk-on to Abilene Christian. And at the time they were D2. So I was like, all right, I'm good. I'll go do this. And when I got there, they changed coaches. So I was like, okay, well, this is good. And to me, I was like, well, this isn't much different than 5A, high school. I felt like the talent level, I was like, this is about the same. I didn't really feel much of a talent difference. And so that spring, I was like, look, I'm good enough to be on scholarship. I should have known this is where my math came in. I made a whole spreadsheet of and I went through every single clip. I was a film junkie. So I went through every single clip. I recorded everybody's stats from practice. I was like, such and such had 15 drops. I had 2. This is a scholarship player. I had the least amount of drops out of everybody.
This is practice film or game?
Practice film. Practice film. This is spring ball. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna prove to them that I should be doing it. Mm-hmm. And I even put some of the high school stats of guys that I went up against one-on-one that were playing D1. There was a guy, his name was Zach Sanchez, and he was the starting corner at OU, and I had torched him in high school. And I was like, look, here's my stats against him in high school. He's the starting corner at OU. I can play at this level. And he looked at me and he was like, you're not gonna have a scholarship here. And so I told him, I was like, well, all right, I'm out. And in that moment, I walked out of the office and I'm like, yo, what did I just do? Yeah. Now I got to call my, I either am going to be a man of my word and actually follow through, and I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. Because this is the summer. So fall starts a new season. I got to figure out what I'm going to do. So I called my parents and I was like, I just basically told them I'm out. My parents are like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to go to JuCo. And so I'm like, never talked to anybody in JuCo. I was just like, look, this is how people, because at the time, JuCo had become cool because Cam Newton had just gone to Blinn and then went to Auburn and won the national championship at Auburn. So JuCo became cool.
Now that was around the same time?
Yeah, okay. It had just happened that year. So that fall was when Auburn had won the national championship. So it's yo, JuCo's cool now. You can go to JuCo and become legit. So I was like, I'm going to go to JuCo. And at the time, Abilene Christian had done this transition from D2 to D1 AA. Okay. And so I was going to go to Navarro Junior College, which is down near the Waco area. And I had known the receiver coach. I'd trained with him a little bit, and he was like, yeah, come on, let's go. Well, at the time, they only allowed 5 transfers from D1. And so I was like, well, I'm D2. Because they had already had their 5, because this is summer. And turns out they classified me as D1 because Abilene Christian had started that transition. And so he was like, I can't take you. So I'm like, yo, this is June. We start the season in August. And he was like, look, I got this guy out in California that I know. He was Jerry Rice's receiver coach. He's like, he said he'll take you. California doesn't have those rules. They have a totally different JuCo system. And so I was like, at that point, I was like, I got to take it. So I told my parents, I was like, I'm going to California. Like, yo, what? So, I go out to California, sight unseen. I have no clue.
And this is in Northern California, right?
Yeah. So this was Santa Clara.
Santa Clara, yeah.
Yep. So we had 8 guys in a 1-bedroom apartment. I roll up and they're like, "Yo, this is your housing."
Last Chance U.
Yeah, basically. Like before Last Chance U was cool, I was like, "Yo, they should have done our school." It was crazy. So we had one person sleeping in the living room, and then we had like a queen mattress that people slept 3 sideways on. And so I was early there. I was like, yo, I'm claiming one of these twin beds. So like it was crazy. But I was like, yo, this is how you gotta do it.
Yeah, you gotta make it.
Yeah. And so when I roll up and go out to the field, Jerry Rice is in the clubhouse. Because his son, Jerry Rice Jr., is out there training with Jerry's old receiver coach. And so I was like, all right, this is how you got to do it. And so, I was like, I'm in the right place. Like, I'm a receiver. Yeah. Jerry Rice, receiver coach, is here, which is crazy because he coached DBs. He didn't even coach receivers. But California JuCo is very different. Like, nobody's on scholarship.
Nah.
There's none of that. Like, we had no left tackle. We picked up our left tackle because he delivered a pizza and we were like, yo, you're tall. Can you play left tackle on Saturday? And he was like, yeah.
Trenches.
So like, California JuCo is totally different. Like our star corner just stopped showing up. Nobody knew where he went.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, like, it's this crazy thing that it was like, yo, what are we doing here? But had a great season. And before Twitter was a thing, I would just spam my highlights to coaches. I was like, yo, you got to check out my highlight. I would hit them like, I had this routine where I would hit up 100 coaches every day on Twitter and like hit their DMs. And I was like, because I got to go D1. Yeah. I had a D2 offer down in Kingsville, and I went on a visit, and my official visit there, we went to this party, and the teammates smashed a beer bottle over the other guy's head, and I was like, yo, if this is the type of stuff they do in here, I do not want to be here. So I told my mom, I was like, I got to turn down this offer. Mm-hmm. And she's like, are you sure this is your only offer? And I was like, yeah, I can't go here. I cannot go here. So I was back home from college, and Gateway had this prophetic service, and the guy was like, I feel like somebody in this room needs a number. And like my mom looked at me and she is like, your number is 1. We just need one person to give you a chance. And so this is funny because I don't even think my receiver coach at OSU even knows this story. But so me and my brother, TCU had their spring game the Saturday before that service. Mm-hmm. And I told my brother, I said, hey, can you go with me and act like we're on an official visit? Like, I'm going to buy some TCU gear, like take my picture with, because they had just won the Big 12. That was like with Andy Dalton. So they had like just gone to the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. So they had like all their trophies and everything out on display at the spring game. And so I was like, yo, take my picture. We're going to act like I'm on an official visit. So I posted it on Twitter and I was like, yo, thanks for the visit. Like, all this stuff. And sure enough, the next day was that Sunday of the prophetic service. And the guy got up there and said that. And literally like a minute after that guy had said that, I got a DM on Twitter from the OSU receiver coach. And he was like, hey, I want to have you out to the spring game. Like, call me on Monday. And he hit me with his number. And I was like,
so did you send him film?
I mean, I had hit everybody.
You hit everybody
with
up?
Film. And I was like, I told my brother, I was like, yo, it worked. Like, because, it's one of those things, like, if somebody wants you, all right, we'll want you type of thing.
It takes one person, one school, and then everybody else starts lining up.
Exactly. And so I had figured kind of that out. And so I was like, yo, this is what I got to do. I got to get it. And so I went on my visit to OSU, and he was like, look, I can't bring you on a scholarship right now. We're stacked, because they had just gone to the Fiesta Bowl. And I was like, okay, you know what? As long as you just give me a shot, like, I'll take it. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, all right, well, you got it. And so I went in, guns a-blazing. I was like, yo, I'm gonna start as a junior. And I learned at that point, like, what gets you to each level doesn't work at the next one. And so I was very humbled. The first day of fall camp, we're in team drills, and I'm like, all right, he's pressing me up. I'm gonna just get off, and like, this is gonna be great. So I tried one of my JuCo releases that worked on all the JuCo guys. I was like, yo, man, I got him right here. When I talk about he jammed me all the way into the right tackle, the offensive line, and I was like, yo, this is a whole different level. I mean, I got chewed out for it. I didn't go back in the rest of practice. It was that bad. But I learned at that point, like, what gets you to each level, you can't do. Yeah. And Like, little did I know it's the same thing in business nowadays, but I learned quickly you have to change. You can't keep doing the same thing as you go up a level. And so after that fall, I was like, yo, I got to get with like some of these like all Big 12 DBs that we have, and I need them to just press the heck out of me all spring, so I did that. And spring ball, I got most improved player on the team. And so by that fall, they were like, yo, you're gonna actually play. And so I was like, man, bet, like this actually worked. And so that fall I got to play. For a second game of conference, we played Texas, and I go in to block one of the linebackers, and they teach you lock in and grab, and when I did, I couldn't get my hand out, and so when he took off with my hand in his shoulder pad, and it tore my labrum completely off. And I just remember being like, oh man, it's over. Like I remember being on the field like, yo, this is over. Yeah. But I can't just lay on the field. So I ran off. But I remember in that moment I was like, this is it. And so I decided to take the cortisol shots and play the rest of the season, and it did a lot of damage. And to the point when I got surgery, the doctor was like, yo, I got to show you this film of like how much scar tissue I had to vacuum up out of your shoulder. And I mean, it was just like, it was a crazy amount. But I finished playing my senior year, and that was the end of my career.
That was it for football.
That was it for football.
Yeah. One thing I'm noticing is like you are super determined. Like going through JuCo's tough, man. Like I remember even myself when I was deciding what I wanted to do, what school I wanted to go to outside of my senior year. JuCo was like a non-option for me because I didn't want to. I knew how treacherous it is. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like it's a real grind. Yeah. Were you ever doubtful in those moments, or you just knew you had to make it?
I like, to me, it was the only option.
Yeah.
I didn't know what else I was gonna do.
And it was NFL or bust for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, because that's all. Like, even it's funny. Like my mom still has the pictures of third grade. You know, they're like, "What do you want to be?" And I like put on the NFL jersey. I was like, "I'm gonna be an NFL player." Yeah. Like all my drawings, it was like, "I'm gonna be an NFL player." And so like for me, I was like, I gotta make this work.
You gotta make it.
I don't really got any other option. So to me, it was like when things didn't work out, I just trained harder because I was like, I think Kevin Durant was the one that said like, it's, you outwork the people with talent, and when the people with talent don't work.
Talent.
Or I'm probably butchering it.
I know what you're talking about.
But and I was like, yo, it doesn't matter how talented people are, like I'll outwork them. And so that was my mentality in it. So I just kept going at it.
Yeah, and I experienced. I know we were talking earlier, but I experienced the same thing with you. As far as I thought I was going to go to the NBA. You know what I mean? Basketball was like my release from home. Right. I felt the safest whenever I was playing basketball. Yeah. Growing up, it had to work. Right. I had to make it to NBA, and then I worked up until my senior year, just as like yourself. Like the 5th game in the season, mess up my knee. And that's it. Basketball is like done for me at that moment. Yeah, and it was really one of like the lowest moments in my life because I've worked my life up to this point, and now it's not gonna happen. So now it's like, what am I gonna do? It was a very dark spot. How did you handle that experience for yourself?
Well, so I came back and moved back home with my parents, and I'd gone to college assuming I was gonna play in the NFL. Yeah. So like my degree was in general studies, which people are like, what is that? And I'm like, they just take all your credits and just pool it into one and call it general studies so you can graduate type of thing. I mean, I took all the different, I took psychology, I took business, I took kinesiology. Like I just took a wide range of classes just to get the credits. So I didn't really have a degree of anything that I could be like, all right, I'm gonna go work in this. So I had a lifeguard job at Lifetime Fitness throughout college whenever I'd come home for like a month before summer workout started. So I was like, I got to go back and be a lifeguard. So I moved back in with my parents and I was a lifeguard at Lifetime Fitness. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll just become a personal trainer. Like I'll start a personal training business. And so I stopped being a lifeguard and was like, all right, I'm going to just, like, I love working out. I'll just train people.
Yeah.
And I quickly found out, like, not everybody likes training like I do. So,
Facts.
Like, being a trainer is more motivating people to get out and do it. I had one client, and this is when I really realized it. He was like, hey, I still want to do my training session. And I show up and he's smoking a cigar, drinking wine in the pool. And he's like, can you train me? And I'm like, yo, you're going to drown. Like, we're not doing any, So like, to me, I was like, okay, I can't do this long term. And it was about the same time where Oklahoma State had called me and said, hey, if you're going to get your shoulder fixed on our dime, you got a month left. Or you're going to have to pay for it yourself. And my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. She was like, look, we want to have kids one day and you got to be able to hold them up. And so I was like, all right, well, when you put it that way, I got to get this thing fixed. And so I quickly found out nobody wanted to be trained by a one-armed person. I can't, if you're struggling on bench press, I can't help you up. So I got fired by all of my clients and I had nothing. And so that was, I think, when it really set in on me because like at the time I was like, I can still do like training and still be involved in the sports world. So like to me, I was still kind of in it.
So you were still kind of hopeful.
Right.
I was like, crisis wasn't hitting yet.
Yeah. So it was like, I can still be in that world, which to me was kind of like satisfying that itch a little bit because I didn't really feel like I had left yet. And so for me, it was in that moment where I lost the business. I lost the first business I had ever started. My girlfriend my girlfriend at the time, she lived in Oklahoma. So like I didn't really have anybody and I was living at my parents' house with a backup plan of being a lifeguard. And so it was extremely humbling. And I remember laying on the floor in my parents' house. My mom was gone to work. My brother was off at college. My sister was at school. I was the only person left in the house. And I just laid on the floor and cried because I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I want to get married to my wife and I want to actually do something. And I didn't know what it was at that time.
Yeah.
But I just knew I was like, God, you got to help me because I don't know what I need to do. Like I had took all these like discover like yourself classes, discover what what you're supposed to do. And I was like hoping that those classes would give me like, all right, this is what you're supposed to do with the rest of your life. That's going to make you happy. And I realized I was putting my hope in the wrong places. And
wrong places.
Like I was putting my hope in these classes to help me figure that out rather than like, okay, the creator who created me, hey, what is it that is going to truly excite me every single day? And when I came to that humble moment, God showed up in a way that I didn't know he was going to show up. And that was when I got a text from the youth pastor at Gateway, and he was like, hey, you told me that you were good at math. There's this guy that's looking for an accountant. He's like, you should go interview for it. And my wife was like, you need to take it, because like in her mind, she's like, yo, you can't just be laying here crying all day long. You got to do, because she's like, I told her, I was like, we can get married when I like get financially stable. And so she's like, all right, well, let's get married. Like, you got to get financially stable so we can get married, type of thing. And it was God working through her to help push me in that direction. Cause I was like, I don't know, like, should I do finances? I don't really know. And so, first thing, whenever I walk in, he's like, hey, I'm a Harvard MBA. And I'm like, man, I better leave right now. Like, I'm general studies, Oklahoma State. And he's like, so this is the job, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm going to give you a proficiency test. And like, let's see if, you can do this job. So he set me up in QuickBooks, and he's like, all right, I need you to do, all these accounting tests, enter in transactions, reconcile it, all that. And he's like, I'll be back to check on you. So
you had no finance,
none
at all.
A little bit in the previous business, but I had not had like full accounting, like full-fledged business. It's like I had 3 clients, hardly any receipts. It's like very basic. Mm-hmm. And so I went through that in like 45 minutes, and I come out and he's like, you're done? And I was like, man, I took too long. Like, I was like, man, I screwed this up. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, all right, let me check. And so he like goes through and checks, and he goes, all right, I think this is good. Like, we'll give you a call in a couple of days, see if it's a good fit. So I'm like, man, I bombed this thing. I didn't get it. Like, how am I going to call my girlfriend and tell her, like, I didn't get the job? And so I'm not even, halfway home before I get the call from him. And he's like, all right, you have the job. It's yours if you want. He's like, I've never had anybody go through it that fast and with that accuracy. And I was like, yo, I actually did good. So I was like, man, and I loved like the organization of accounting. I loved finance. And so I was like, man, this is actually fun. Like, this is cool. Yeah. And plus he was like very flexible. He's like, look, you get your work done, you can go home. And I was like, man, I don't have to be training people at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Like, this is nice. Yeah. And so that's where I got my start into it. And I moved out of that like depression because I finally said, okay, God, like, I gave it over to God. I was like, yo, I can't figure this out. I've been trying to take all these classes, all these, strength finders, everything, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I said, okay, God, like, if you created me, you know what I'm made to do. Help me figure it out.
And it's just a simple prayer, just like that?
Yeah. And that was, so like one of the other pastors at Gateway, his name was Tim Ross. And
I love Tim Ross.
Yeah. And he was like this unlock for me because the way that he talked to God was like how me and you were having a conversation.
Yeah.
He's like,
Tim Ross is dope.
Yeah. He's like, just talk to God. Like, you don't have to have all these like formal prayers and like, you're not more holy if you pray for 15 minutes versus 30 seconds. Like, I remember he would get up there and he'd be like, dear God, bless this message. Amen. And I'm like, yo, he's the pastor. Did he just prayed in 30 seconds? Like, what is this? Yeah. And so it was like that unlock of like, okay, I can just talk to God. Like, just you and me are talking. And so that's when I was like, all right, God, like, I don't know what to do. You help me. Mm-hmm. And so that was that unlock of that. And God showed up.
And how did you get into your business now? Because you figure out that you love finance. You just naturally love it. Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense given your history, the way you were lining up your scholarships, right? The scholarships that you needed. So now you find out that you like finance. What made you want to do something for yourself? Because was entrepreneurship ever in the cards for you?
I think it was always there. So like when I was 12, my parents were like, we didn't have a ton of money growing up. So my parents were like, if you want to do something, you got to make your own money. And I was like, well, I don't know, like what are people going to hire me to do? And my dad was like, well, you can borrow our lawnmower and you can mow people's lawns. Cause that's what he did. And so I I was like, all right, I got on the computer and I'm making flyers. I'm like sticking them on everybody's door. So I kind of had that like early on of it. And my mom loves to tell this story about, she was like, I always knew you would be negotiating stuff. Because when I was 10 years old, there was this garage sale down the street. And I came back home and I was like, Mom, they got this picture of the Eiffel Tower. Like, you know, back when you were a kid, you think the Eiffel Tower is this super cool thing. And I was like, I gotta have it. It's on wood. Like they did a gloss coat on it. Like, I gotta have this thing. It's $5. And she was like, well, you only got $1. So either you can get them to do it for $1 or you're not getting it. And so I came back home with the Eiffel Tower, and she was like, how'd you get that? And I was like, well, I just, you know, I talked to him and we went back and forth a little bit, and I told him, you know, I only got $1 and they wanted it gone. And so I said, well, I'll take it off your hands if you want it gone, and here's my $1. And she was like, well, okay, it works. So you got your picture. So I kind of had that, you know, I can do this mentality earlier on. And come to find out, my grandfather had his own construction business, building state highways in Oklahoma. My dad didn't do any entrepreneurship, but I guess it's always been in my family type of thing. And so when I started in accounting, I was not thinking that I would have my own accounting firm someday. Right. I always thought I would take over that accounting firm when the owner retired. And it was January of 2020. I had one of our clients at the accounting firm that I was working at come to me, and he said, hey, I got like $120,000 tax bill. He's like, can you help me like fix it? Like, can you figure out like what things I need to do in order to reduce that so I don't have to do it? He's like, because if I have to pay it, I'm gonna lose my house. And so like for me, I was like, well, I don't know how to do that, but hopefully the owner of the accounting firm does. So I told him, and I was like, hey, like, here's the situation. Like, we got to help this guy. And he looked me dead in the face and he goes, that's not our problem. And I told my wife, I was like, I can't do that. I cannot get back on the phone with this guy and be like, you're going to lose your house, because we can't do it. So I told her, I said, one, I got to learn tax, and two, I got to have a separate business, because he didn't want to do it under this accounting firm. And so that's how I got that start in that. And of course, 3 months later, COVID hit. And so I was like, man, this is, he was gracious enough to let me still work while I got my feet underneath me in the
Who was
taxes.
gracious?
The former accounting owner.
So you told him you were stepping out?
I told him I was going to do tax. So I was like, look, I'm going to have a separate business. I'm going to do tax. It's not going to interfere with any of your clients. I'm not going to take them away. Like all of the accounting revenue that I do with them, it's going to stay with you. If I do taxes, it's going to be on my own. And he was very gracious with me and allowing me to do that. And it wasn't until August of 2024 when I was forced to say, okay, I've got to fully step away. And it was, my son was 6 months old at the time, and it was absolutely terrifying.
Forced how?
Because I was like, majority of my money was coming from, the work I was doing at the accounting firm that was year round. I was making my money there. I'd make, a good chunk of money during tax season, but then I had nothing the rest of the year. Because that's like NFL and professional sports, it's like you make all your money in the season, and then you got to make that stretch for the rest of the year. And taxes are kind of the same if you're just doing taxes. And so my son is 6 months old. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be like relinquishing majority of my income to step out and be full-time in my own business, which I had grown it a significant amount. It was still pretty good, but it's like,
what was it doing?
We were doing about 200 grand.
Okay.
So, enough to be able to cover my family. But there's, especially in the client services world, there's always kind of that fear of like, okay, if a client or two drops off, that's, what I'm making. Like, I then I got to go back out and find it. Mm-hmm. And so having that extra responsibility, it's kind of like that scary moment of, okay, how do I make this transition? Which, it's like that transition from going to play sports to not playing sports. It's like that scary unknown of how is this going to work out? What am I going to do with it? And my wife was like, you have to do it. You can't, like, you don't really have an option. And so the accounting firm owner that I was working for he kind of forced my hand to it because my largest client had kind of become a pain to him, and he was like, hey, I'm terminating our contract with them. And the way it worked was my revenue or my pay was tied to however many clients I worked on. So that one was, 50-60% of my pay. So my pay was going to be gone anyways. And he was like, I'm not going to hold a NDA or anything over you. You can work with them if you want to. But he was like, I don't want to have them as a client anymore. And so for me, I was like, well, I got to work with them. They were my first client. They had been faithful, and so I was like, I'm going to pursue it, but I'm going to leave fully. And so it was kind of a bittersweet moment, but yet terrifying at the same moment. And so, because my wife is starting to talk to me about like, I think I might want to leave my job. My son's getting old enough now to where she's like, I want to stay home and hang out with him. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to, quit my job and do this full time. How is this going to work out? And so I make that full switch at August of 2024. And man, I mean, God just blew it up from there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was, my wife had worked in sales. She's sold pretty much everything known to man. She was incredible at sales. And so I was like, look, I know you're doing sales with another job, but can you help me with sales too? 'Cause I mean, she just has this gift to where, like when she talks to people, they just feel comfortable. And, like our largest client, I had been trying to get for 6 months, calling him, emailing him. We had gone back and forth, but I could just never nail him down and sign him on. So I said, she had been asking me like, let me call him. And I'm like, no, I can do it. That determination got in my way on that one. And so I finally was like, look, I can't get it. Like, you call him. I'm talking about, she didn't even talk to him. She left a voicemail. 15 minutes later, he signed a contract. And I was like, what did you say in that voicemail? Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, just talk to him. And I was like, I mean, she just has this incredible gift. And so she has helped me tremendously in growing the company with this family feel atmosphere of like, when people join, they're like, man, you're like family for life. And my wife, she grew up in a small town, so she's like, she's just friendly to everybody. Yeah. And everybody can feel it. And they just, like, she has helped me tremendously in that journey.
Yeah.
I've seen a stat where it's like when two couples are invested in each other, their income capacity like increases by like 60% or something like that. So it seems like that's what's going on in your marriage. How important is defining roles when it comes to working with your partner?
So I think like knowing each other's strengths is super important. So like she knows my strength is the finance side. So she doesn't jump in and be like, all right, I think we should do the client's finances like this. She knows her lane is the sales and client relationships and employee relationships. And I'm like, okay, if there's a tiebreaker, she's getting it in that lane. If there's a tiebreaker in finances, I'm getting it in that lane. And knowing where each other thrives and not, trying to overstep into their lane is super important. But I think more than that is trusting each other. Because if, for example, I don't trust her with the sales and development, then she can't truly thrive because I'm always going to be trying to have my hand in what she's doing. One, she made it easy on me because I saw like all the success. I mean, she has sold everything. So I was like, okay, like it doesn't matter what she sells. She's incredible at it. And so for me, it was a little bit easier because I had seen the proof in the pudding already. So for me, I was like, look, she knows what she's doing. I don't have to overstep. She had, heard from the clients of, raving about what I do with their finances. And so she was like, I know you know what you're doing. So like, each of us trusted each other in those lanes. And I think having that trust and that bond of like, all right, you're going to do your stuff, I'm going to do my stuff, and work at it together was huge.
And so you've acquired like pretty decent revenue in what you're involved in as a Christian. Why do you think there's such shame when it comes to being a Christian and desiring wealth?
I think sometimes our motivations can be in the wrong places with it. And what I mean by that is, taking parts of the Bible and saying, well, this is true, is doing Christians a disservice. And it can go both ways for being rich in the like give to get world of Christianity, or the polar opposite of like, well, you have to be poor to be a true Christian. And I think it's about taking the Bible as a whole and saying, okay, this is the story of God. Like when you think about it from a full scope, if God wants to save people and influence people to love God and love people, which is, the greatest commandment of all, which is love God and love his people, why would he not want the wealth to be in the people that he trusts the most? Why would God not want Christians to have money to put into, rescuing child soldiers or rescuing people out of sex slaves? Why would God not want money put into those things? And so, when you look at the story of the talents, like the person who had their one talent and buried it, Jesus didn't say, oh, I just took it back. He said, no, I took it and I gave it to the person who was a faithful steward with what I had given them first. And so I think when you see Christians with wealth, it's because they've shown that they can be trustworthy with small amounts. And that's the thing about money is it typically, you don't go from I have no money to millions of dollars. in the case of professional athletes, that is typically how it happens. But for, 99% of people, there's that growth to it. There's that, all right, I go from 0 to 100 grand. I go from 100 grand to 500. I go from 500 to $1 million. Like, there's that gradual progression of like, okay, am I going to steward 100 grand well? Am I going to steward 500 grand well? And I think as you show like, hey, I'm trustworthy with this, then God continues to progress that. Because in the only place in the Bible God says you can test him is in the tithe. And he says, test me in this. Give your tithe and see if I don't pour out blessings on you. And I'm like, okay, if the only place in the Bible God is saying you can test him, he's like, test me. Just see if this is true. And the incredible thing is everybody that I have talked to that tests him in that has not just seen financial blessings, but blessings in every area of their life, their marriage and their relationship with their kids and their friendships and their, every area. It's not just finances. And I think that's where like we can get caught up in the showboaty, like social media stuff. You see somebody pulling up in a Ferrari and it's like, that's not always the reality of it. It's like, okay, you're not seeing behind the scenes. Like for example, Joel Osteen, he's one of the prominent like Christians who is wealthy, yet he doesn't take any money from the church. Everybody's donations, everybody's tithe on Sundays does not go in his pocket. It goes directly into the church and directly into their missions. And I think people see those like, okay, Joel does have money, but it's not like he's not taking from the church. And it's about that stewardship of that's what he felt like God called him to do. And I think it goes more towards the heart of it rather than, if we desire to be rich just to be rich and, show off on social media, I don't believe God will bless that. But if you're like, God, I'm just going to be faithful with what you give me and put it in your hands, that's when he allows it to multiply. It's like the fish and the loaf of bread. He was like, open your hands, don't close your fist on these 2 fish, open your hands, let me bless them, and then it'll multiply in your hands. And it's like, that applies to us in our finances. It's like, don't grip hold to what you have, because I think it was Craig Groeschel. He's like, I can't stack money on your hand when it's a closed fist. Yeah. But he's like, if you open it up, I can stack those bills as high as they can go. And so he's like, don't hold so tight to what you currently have, because God can't put any extra in there. And I think I was like, man, that was an eye-opening message for me, because it was like, I'm holding on so tight to what I have. Because that's like when you grow up with nothing, you're like, even when you like make 50 grand, you're like, yo, I got some money. I'm gonna hold on tight to this thing. And it's like, but he can't do anything with that. Just like with the fish and loaf of bread, he couldn't do anything. He can't do anything if you're holding on to it like this. You got to open your hand.
No, I like that. I definitely agree with you on tithing and giving your first fruits, because then it aligns your heart with God, showing him that you know where the money's coming from. Right. So I definitely agree. I got some quick hitters from you. For you to expand on some of the quotes that you've been preaching around. The first one, the lack of knowledge of the system of money is a prison.
Yeah, that like whenever you don't know how money works, when you don't understand it, you don't know how to play. It's like us in sports. If you are like, I'm going to go play football or I'm going to go play basketball, but I'm never going to learn the rules, you're never going to do anything. It's like you have to understand the rules of the game in order to play it well. It's like, I can't play well if I'm playing out of bounds. It's like you have to know the rules in order to do it.
Okay. Next one, get around other people who will push you to be better.
I think that's probably the biggest one. Is like when you get around, it's like I love to relate stuff to sports. And so like in the locker room, especially at D1, everybody's at a high level. Like everybody is extremely talented, and it forces you to either get up to that level or get out. And I think getting around people that are at a level that's higher than you, you're going to gradually get up there. It's just like when I came from JuCo, I was at that JuCo level, but I got around the people who were all Big 12, all Americans, and I was forced to get up to that level. And so I think getting around people who are beyond you and have more knowledge than you is a superpower.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Especially like when you go to college, people, it is like a humbling thing because you realize that everybody who you're playing against now was the best in whatever league they came from.
Right.
So you got to rise to that competition.
Yeah.
What about under-promising and over-delivering?
So I firmly believe in that because people's satisfaction typically comes from their expectation. So if you set the expectation at a level that you can either achieve or blow past, you're always going to create satisfaction. And so even if it's bad news, give it to them. Like if they want something by Wednesday, but you're like, I know I can't get to it until Friday, tell them I can't, it'll be delivered by Monday. So then when you deliver it on Friday, they're like, oh, wow, I expected this on Monday because you said it, but now it's on Friday. So now you've kind of flipped that. Probably goes to my psychology classes that I took, but it's about framing the expectations properly so that you can get that outcome.
How do you think being an athlete has shown up in your success in business?
I think for one, the determination, but I think more than anything, it's about knowing how to work together as a team to achieve a goal. And what I mean by that is like playing a team sport, you learn, like if I'm the quarterback, I need the offensive line, I need the receiver, I need everybody to do their job in order for us to succeed. Just like in basketball, it's like if everybody drops off and you have 5 guys trying to guard you as a one person, it's like you're not going to be able to go very far. Mm-hmm. You need everybody to work together. You need him to set a pick so that you can move around and get the shot off. It's like you have to be able to understand that you need other people to help you succeed. And, other people meaning your own team and customers and clients that you service. You need them in order to succeed. You're not going to put money in your own pocket. Mm-hmm. So you have to learn that serving people and working together is, I think, probably the biggest thing that I've taken from sports to the business world.
I love it. Well, man, that's it for the show. I appreciate you coming through.
Yeah.
How can people reach you or even get some services from you?
Yeah. So our accounting firm, abundantx.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Grant Newell, and Instagram as well. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate you coming through.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.